Jeff Schulte is back, the one and only pool contractor, pool inspector extraordinaire.
Some of the above.
You told me a few weeks back, maybe longer, about this pool that was a complete disaster that you went to go inspect. Now, was that something that you just got hired to do? How did that happen?
Well, in addition to inspecting pools for properties that people are buying, I also do inspections for the Contractor State License Board here in California.
Oh.
And I was doing a training inspection with a new guy. Actually, he's not new, but newer than me.
Show him how to sharpen his skills.
Yeah, well, that's it, exactly, sharpening skills. And he's very competent, and he's been in the business a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just guiding him through a very difficult
pool inspection. So let me stop you there for a second. So something I haven't pointed out yet with you is, there is a difference from building pools and inspecting pools. Would you say?
Of course there is.
Okay. So that's the same thing with home inspectors like myself, as opposed to a contractor coming to inspect your house. So when a contractor comes over to inspect someone's house, they are not doing anything close to what a home inspector does. Just want to put that out there so people understand that. I'm just going to get a contractor to come over and he's going to walk through your house and leave. That's all he's going to do. Oh, yeah, that looks good. Okay, yeah, we can do that, yeah. Oh, yeah, you got a raised foundation, yeah. He's not going to go under your house. They just don't do any of that stuff. They don't go in the attic. So tell me a similar comparison on the pool side of things.
Well, a contractor has a certain mindset when he's walking in.
Money.
And he's looking for a contract. And he may or may not want to do the job, but he's going to point out a lot of things that may or may not be an actual problem.
Right.
And it depends upon his skill. There are contractors who have been in business for 30 years, and they have 30 cumulative years of experience. They learn something new each year. And then there are contractors who do the same thing every single year for 30 years.
Right.
And their breadth of knowledge is very limited. But they still call themselves contractors, and they can still be licensed by the state. An inspector has a worldwide view of what he's looking at. He looks at all of the details. He's checked on what needs to be done, the different levels of skills that were provided to constructing this house. With his checklist, which he has honed over the years, he has a certain number of things that he wants to look at in addition to what other people would consider to be normal.
Right.
So he's much more professional about what he's doing.
Right. He's more detailed, so it's more detail-oriented. He's got a list, he's got a checklist he's going through, make sure everything's functioning, and so forth, right?
And then he's going to write his opinion whether it meets industry standard or doesn't meet industry standard, and why.
Got it. Okay. So let's get back to this interesting pool story that you have. So I actually pulled up the photos that you had texted me a while back. This is like, wow. So how old is this pool?
This pool's about a year old.
That is a disaster. And that's just my first glance.
It's not holding water, so the owner drained it. He was afraid that too much water was being leaked back into the earth, which makes the problem even more compounded.
Was this on a flat lot or a hillside?
It's on a hillside.
Oh, that's not good.
So what we can't see is the lot in front was cut, and there's a hillside going up behind this.
The cracks here, what caught my eye right away was all this white. So it looks like the pool was leaking, something was leaking into the pool itself. Am I right?
Yes, the groundwater level is high, and the pool had been leaking, and water's transferring back and forth from the pool to the earth and from the earth to the pool.
Wow.
So,
I see. So water from the pool was going through the cracks, and then it was coming back in.
Right.
Wow. Interesting.
So here we have salts and minerals that are being brought up from the soil through the concrete, and it's dissolving the structure, and it comes out through the cracks and precipitates onto the surface of the pool.
And I noticed I got this rust right here. How do you get rust in a 1-year-old pool?
The pool's constructed of a steel shell, and then it's shot over with gunite. And the steel has been exposed to a lot of water, and it's rusting through the shell of the pool. Now, there are two types of pool shells. There's gunite, where they mix sand and cement on site, and then they blast it through a hose, and it's wetted at the end when it comes out, and they spray it on and build a pool shell.
Is that pre-mixed?
It's not pre-mixed. It's mixed on site.
Mixed on site, okay.
Then there's shotcrete, which is pre-mixed.
Okay.
And it comes from a batch plant, and it's guaranteed at a certain strength as it comes off the truck. And it's wet, and it's sprayed through a hose and is deposited on, and then it's cut and smoothed. What
do you mean by cut?
When it's sprayed onto the surface of the pool, it's very rough and it's wavy. And so they overspray it so that it's larger, thicker than it needs to be. And then they take up to 5-inch knives and they...
You mean like trowels and stuff?
Yeah, and they carve it.
Yeah.
So, and they trowel it.
Okay.
This pool is from the former. It's gunite, and the strength of this is supposed to be monitored as it's being mixed by somebody out in the front street. And with gunite, the mixture comes in a big pile of sand out front, and there's a big container of raw, unmixed cement powder. And there's a machine with a screw that's maybe 10 feet tall, and they dump sand in one side of this machine, and they dump cement in the other. And as it goes up this screw mix, it blends it to a certain strength. And there's dials and gauges that tell the operator of this machine how strong it is. The problem is, and this is the little secret that nobody knows about.
Shh.
Yes, don't tell anybody.
It's a secret.
After a couple of uses, the dials and gauges get so encrusted with cement you can't read them.
Oh, shit.
So they listen for the sound that the machine makes as it's mixing. And it makes a certain noise. And you can be way off in the strength
I
of
bet.
gunite. So all the independent guys don't use gunite. We all use shotcrete.
So if someone's using the other, you want to make sure you go out there and check their gauges first, make sure they can read them.
Yes, and there's such a thing as taking samples, and you can take samples by making a panel that's approximately 12 inches by 12 inches by 6 inches thick, and shooting a little panel and carving it and setting that aside, and it could be sent to a lab. Or you can shoot cylinders if they're large enough. And there's several ways to take samples. And then they go to a lab, and they're guaranteed at a certain strength.
I see. So you take samples before you actually shoot the pool.
Yes.
Well, wouldn't that take days or weeks before you actually get to shoot the pool?
It does.
So that slows things down. But if you want to be really precise, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. Typically, they're taken as you're building the shell of the pool. And then it's just the lab samples are tested up to 28 days later. And then you get those results confirming that the pool was built as it should have been.
Oh, I see. But if it's wrong, then you get bad news.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Now the contractor is obligated to come back and rip it all out?
I actually don't know. I only know when a pool has failed, whether it needs to be ripped out or not. Sometimes a pool can be less strong than it's supposed to be, and it works for years and years and years.
I see. Let's get into what my customers typically freak out over, and that's a crack, because crack kills. And crack kills deals. So sometimes I'll see like a really hairline crack in a surface. That's, look, we're all looking at the pool. Now, the customers don't understand that my eyes only work as good as their eyes, and I can only see through the water like they can. They think I'm coming in with the, Superman eyes and X-ray vision, and I can predict what's going to happen underneath the surface. That's not the case. I'm only doing a visual inspection. But if I see a hairline crack, I usually tell them, you know what? If I think it's just a hairline crack just on the final finish, I tell them, look, it looks like a hairline crack. It's most likely superficial, but you'd have to have a pool contractor come out and look at it and let you know for sure, and then give you a course of action to fix it and possible prices and stuff like that. So is that good advice?
That's very good advice. And alarming somebody unnecessarily is not a good thing.
No.
So here you've taken that portion of the scare, the worry out of it.
Right.
It's not atypical for a plaster to have been installed, and it takes a day or two to fill up the pool. And what happens is the plaster will dry to the touch, but it cures underwater for the next 28 days, just like cement does. And while it's dry, it's shrinking, and there may be microscopic cracks in the surface, which don't amount to anything. And the industry understands that it can still meet industry standard with spider webbing cracks or small cracks. And they're not structural, and they're not leaking.
So here's a better question, maybe. Maybe this is a better question. Any type of a finish crack on the surface, should it be fixed right away?
No. On a brand new plaster job, when you've just filled the pool in the first week, you may notice a lot of cracks on the surface. But this amazing thing happens through water chemistry, and that's that the water will leach out calcium out of the plaster surface. And most cases, they'll mend themselves, these cracks.
Really?
They'll seal. You may still be able to see the cracks, but they'll be completely sealed over.
Yeah, but what if it's not a new pool?
If it's an old pool and we see cracks, especially like cracks like these where it's
those are excessive,
readily visible. It's possible to take some dye, and the dye can be in the form of a 1 ounce bottle of phenol red in your pool test kit, or methyl blue, or it could be a 1/2 ounce bottle of food dye that you have in your kitchen cabinet. And if you pull this dye out and unscrew the top and squeeze a couple of drops underwater right next to the crack, if it's leaking, the dye will go right into the cracks.
That's a good way to test a skimmer.
It is.
And I'm going to jump off topic, and jump right into that. Just tell you a quick story about that. I had a pool years ago in Chatsworth, and I was losing water. And I knew I was really focused on watching this pool to see what it was doing. That's just how I am. A little too anal sometimes. And I noticed every couple of days I had to put water in it. I'm like, so this thing's leaking. I had no visible cracks around the base of the pool, inside the pool, anywhere. The tile all looked good. I didn't see any kind of abnormalities around the surface or anything like that. So I'm like, it's got to be my skimmer. So before I thought of using the dye, then again, I was thinking the dye thing, it's kind of amateur to me. I was just thinking, that's probably not the best way of doing it. So I contacted a leak detection company. What a fucking scam that was, dude. I'm not going to give you the guy's name. This guy was an idiot. And so he sends out one of his guys, and he puts this little probe inside the water, walks around for about, 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, I know, we're not really noticing any leaks. I'm like, okay. It was a sound device he put in there.
A hydrophone?
Yeah. So that's what he was using. So they charged me $375 for that. So I'm like, well, I tried it. He came out. He did his service, which I think was absolute bullshit. So now I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to prove this guy wrong. So I went down to the pool store, grabbed the dye, brought it home, poured it right next to my skimmer. That blue dye shot right into that cracks in the skimmer, which he never even looked at. So I called the owner. I said, hey, you need to send your guy back out here. I didn't tell him what I did yet. And check this pool again for leaks. I know this pool's leaking. So he sends his guy out, and he comes back. And in the process of the phone call, I said, by the way, I paid you $375. And when your guy left, I put a stop payment on that check. He's like, really? What'd you do that for? And he starts getting all ugly with me on the phone. I said, listen, I'm not going to let you scam me and take my money for doing nothing. So you get your guy back here to look at this pool again, because I already found the leak. But I didn't tell him I found the leak. I wanted to see what they would do. The guy comes back out, walks up to he goes, yeah, my boss wants us to get paid first. I'm like, that ain't happening. You have a nice day. So then the owner of the company we're yelling at each other on the phone. I said, hey man, do what you got to do. You're not scamming me. He said, I already found the leak. The leak's in the skimmer. And your guy with all his technology who spent 10, 15 minutes on my pool couldn't find anything. And you think I'm going to keep you $375? I don't think so. He took my case, went down to the DA's office, tried to have me charged with writing bad checks. I'm like, I didn't write a bad check. I put a stop payment on a check. And I had the amount of money in the account. So that's not how the law works. So I knew how the law worked on that. And then he says, well, you're not going to hear the last of me. You're going to pay me. Trust me. I said, why don't you come down here yourself? Because he's talking all tough with me on the phone. He goes, no, you don't want a piece of me. You don't want to mess with me. I said, dude, come on down. I got a nice big front lawn. We can have a little talk out there. So I was challenging the guy because he was such a dick on the phone. I wasn't being a dick with him. He started the whole thing about, just raising his voice. You don't know who you're messing with and all this. I'm like, come on, dude, seriously? You're a business owner and you're talking like this? So long story short, I get this letter in the mail weeks later from the district attorney's office saying that I need to get down there and explain this. I call my lawyer. I send it over to him. He goes, I'll take care of that. He's had that thing snuffed immediately. That's what happened with a pool leak detection company. So what's your thought on pool leak detection in general?
I am not a leak detector. That's a profession within its own.
Is it snake oil?
It can be, but we've used people in the past that have found leaks that I never could have found.
Oh, really? Okay, so it does work.
It does work.
Okay.
It just you've got to have an ethical company.
Ethical.
I believe the company that you're referring to, and I'm not going to mention the name.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. The gentleman retired and sold the company, and the new people are much better.
Ah, yeah.
If I'm thinking of the same one you are.
Yeah. So anyway, back to this pool story. Here's another photo.
Okay, we're looking at a photo.
There's a second photo.
Well, let's go back to the first one.
First one, okay.
Yeah. Okay, this has two parallel cracks right across the middle of the pool.
Yep.
And when I see parallel cracks like that, especially if they're spaced 18 inches on center or 24 inches on center or 12 inches on center, it makes me think that those cracks lie right over rebar that's not covered by enough concrete.
Ah.
And a crack would occur there.
So what you're saying is the rebar is too close to the surface.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that comes to mind here, but there are just so many cracks in this.
Yeah, the rust thing caught my eye right away. Like I said, are these considered like fissures?
You could call them fissures.
Yeah. Okay, so can we go to the next photo?
Yes.
All right, so here's the second one. That's more of a close-up of the side of the pool. That looks like probably the deeper end.
Now, we call this a blown shell, where it cannot be fixed. There's no repairs that are...
FUBAR.
Yes, fouled up beyond any recognition.
You used the word fouled. I was going to use another word, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, I don't know all of the audience here yet.
I don't think I've offended anybody yet. Sorry if I did. It's unintentional.
It's just another snafu, isn't it?
It's another snafu.
Situation normal, all fouled up.
Yes. So yeah, these are a lot of cracks. I've yet to see a pool in this condition. I have not seen one like this.
To see a pool in this condition means there's a lot of movement going on underneath where you can't see it.
Right.
The soil underneath the pool is moving. The pool itself is moving. It takes a lot of force to cause cracks like this to occur.
Mm.
So for me, this is groundwater in the soil that's very close to the surface. It's a weak pool shell. If the pool hadn't moved like this, it likely would have just floated out of the ground like a concrete boat.
A concrete boat?
Yes.
I've heard of those stories where they kind of pop right up.
Pop out of the ground, yeah.
What a ride that would be if you were actually in the pool when it happened.
You wouldn't even notice it. It happens so slowly. I once knew, and this is just an anecdote, but a guy who drained a pool to acid wash it, and he's down in the bottom of the pool, and he gets out, and all of a sudden he looks around. What's strange about this? And the pool had risen about 4 to 6 inches. But it doesn't raise out of the ground evenly. One end was still close to the level.
Right.
And the other
all
end
like that.
Yeah, it's tilted.
Wow.
Now, when a pool pops out of the ground, it doesn't come out of the pool evenly, and there's not a gap underneath the pool. It sucks up mud and dirt with it. So it can't be re-leveled.
It's filling in that empty space as it comes up.
You can't re-level this pool.
What a mess. So you got to jackhammer that apart and redo it, right?
There you go.
Wow. That's a big mess.
That's a big mess. And that's likely what's going to happen here. This pool's going to need to be jackhammered out and completely rebuilt. But you can't just do the pool shell. You've got to do the coping and the steps and all of the cement work around it.
Well, I really hope the owner of this pool is able to get some recourse out of the person who put it in, because that's an expensive thing that probably in litigation over right now.
Yeah, and I can't comment.
Sure. No, I didn't think you would, but I'm just saying, on a legal side of things, I mean, that's a big job, and that's what, $50,000 to $100,000 for a pool?
To remove the pool, it could be $30,000 to $50,000.
Just to remove it.
Well, yeah, it's got to be broken up into pieces, and it's got to be hauled back, and dump fees and hauling fees, and oh my gosh, yes, it's expensive.
Dump fees ain't cheap. Yeah, dump fees are not cheap.
Yeah, they charge by the pound now.
Yeah.
Used to be by the truckload, but those days are long gone. And you can't just start building a new pool. You've got to get new permits, and you've got to get geosoils approval. Mm-hmm. So once you dig this pool out, you may have to dig out several more feet of soil till you find good soil underneath this. Then you backfill it with solid cement and maybe some steel in there. Then you can start.
What is the one thing that a pool needs to be properly inspected when you show up to do an inspection? It needs water.
Okay.
So that
one went right over my head.
See, it's kind of a obvious. It's an obvious thing.
Yes.
But it can be a trick question. So what's the one thing a pool needs to go inspect it?
On a standard inspection, you've got to have water.
You need water, right? So I've shown up to houses to do pool inspections, and there's no water. So the customer's like, well, what can you do? I said, I'm going to just refund your money. There's nothing I can do here except say there's no water in your pool. Because there's no water in your pool, I can't turn on your filtration system. I can't test any of that. You can't
even tell if it's level.
Right. I don't want to run this thing dry. Yeah, I can't turn on these pumps and stuff like that. There's nothing I can do. Here's your money back. You need to have this thing filled, and if you want me to come back then we can redo the deal, and I'll come back out. But because it's empty, that to me is kind of a red flag. Why is it empty? So
that's a good supposition, because pools are only empty for a reason.
Right. Switches are shut off typically for a reason. Like circuit breakers on a panel, they're off typically for a reason. Either they keep tripping or someone turns it off because they know there's a problem. So it kind of goes along the same line there. So my point is, anybody that's looking for a pool inspection, make sure you have water in the pool before you have us come over.
That's one, and the other is make sure the water's clear so we can view the bottom.
Yeah, so that's another thing I ran into before too. Hey, John, we need the pool inspection too, but the pool's kind of green. I said, well, it's got water in it, right? Yeah, well, I can at least run it. I can run the system. I can't comment on the pool surface because I can't see it. If you're okay with that, we can proceed. If you don't want it, you want to wait till it's clear. But when I showed up, the guy had come out and shocked it, and it was clear enough. It was a little cloudy, but it was better.
And it's like you going out to a house and it has no electricity or the gas has been shut off and you can't do your complete test.
I can't test, but I can still look at the components. Like on a home inspection, if the gas is off, I can still inspect the gas appliances, but I can't test them.
Right.
I just can't turn them. But I can see if the connections are good. They looks like they're safely installed. They have the right vent piping. There's a lot of things I can still do. So I always tell people, look, I can still look at this stuff. You're not getting shortchanged by me. I just can't turn it on. We get some more photos here. I just love this pool.
This is a photo going through the steps of the pool, and a big chunk up in the upper right has popped off, showing the depth of the crack. Now, as we're looking at this crack, we can see up in the upper right, it's wide. It's between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 inch wide.
Yeah, it looks like a piece broke off right there.
Piece broke off, and then we can see a line of putty.
Yes.
Epoxy putty that was hastily installed as a temporary fix.
Right.
And it doesn't match in color, doesn't match in texture. Who knows why it doesn't go all the way up and all the way down.
That looks like the stuff you would use for like a small crack on a skimmer, right?
It's a temporary thing.
Yeah, it's like a Band-Aid.
A Band-Aid.
Yeah.
So it might get you through a season or longer, but eventually it will fall off.
Right. So this picture is very busy. I noticed these, it looks like grinding marks right here in the finish.
That's what it looks like. And then slide over to the fitting right there.
Yeah, look at that.
So this is...
You can see the aggregate.
Yeah, this is not the quality of installation I would like to see.
No, I've yet to see something like this. Craziest pool finish I ever seen was a just worn out, like it almost looked like a leopard. This pool finish, the best term I could say was it looked like a leopard. It had spots everywhere. And what it was is there was just a whole bunch of missing pieces of the finish. And it was kind of weird. And the realtor looked at me and goes, "Oh no, they did it that way. They designed it that way." I was like, "Oh, really?"
Do you have a picture of that available?
I don't, because I'd have to really research.
Okay.
I just thought of it now. So if I had thought of it sooner, I'd have had it ready to go. But it was not part of the pool. It was a damaged finish, but it was just very consistent all the way through it. And I said, "Ma'am, this is not the way it was made."
If I see a pool with a surface like that, and the holes or the spots can be dime-sized or bigger, they can be a foot in diameter. Most of them are typically small, between a dime and $half size. That we call that spalling. And
right.
The top surface top surface layer is dried out quicker than the underlying material. And when we plaster a pool, we're troweling it and we're pushing the heavy particles down, and the fine particles come up to the surface. And that's what makes it really smooth rather than grainy.
Right.
And that top layer of fine particles separates typically when the pool's had way too many chemicals installed, such as acid, or it's been emptied and dried out for a long time where it begins to self-peel. And when that happens, it can be rough and it can be dangerous to little kids' feet. Probably not adults, because we've all got calluses on our feet, but it can cut a child's feet. And you wouldn't necessarily notice it while the child is in the pool because the blood dissipates in the water.
And they're just having so much fun.
They're having so much fun. But then they get out of the pool and their feet are red and cut, and oh my gosh, that's a horror.